Good afternoon, Judy. How are you?
I'm very well, Sharon. How are you?
I'm very good. For our readers, today we're going to be interviewing Judy Carroll. Judy Carroll was born in Queensland, Australia in 1952 into a Creole, English and Romany Gypsy family background. After school, she pursued a career as a professional flamenco dancer. We won't be asking her to give us any demonstrations later, unless she wants to, unless the wine starts flowing. You were following in the footsteps of your grandmother, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Judy feels strongly that this cultural background has helped her to assimilate her ET encounters into her daily life. Can I just call you Judy?
Yes,
that'd be great.
Fine.
Judy's lifelong encounters have always been with the off-planet visitors known as the Greys or the Zeta Reticulans, which has given her deep insight into the field of ET and human contact. At the age of 30, she had a fully conscious daytime encounter in which she recognised the visitors as family, that must have been a very big day. A very big day. In 1995, during an encounter at a sacred site in England, the visitors asked her to start writing books about contact from the extraterrestrial perspective, which is quite different to anything else I've read. In 2000, she coincidentally met Helene Kaye and was a vital part in helping her family through their ET contact experiences, something which a lot of us wish we had somebody like Judy around. Through their joint efforts, they co-authored a non-fiction book called The Zeta Message. Would you like to hold? Oh, I've got that one. There you go. The Zeta Message. Thank you. Judy has also completed 3 levels of Reiki and spent several years as a practitioner before completing the master level, which qualified her to teach Reiki and also do attunements, I imagine.
Oh,
yes,
that's the whole thing.
Yep. How many attunements are there in Reiki?
In level 1 there's 4, level 2 there's 1, level 3 there's 1.
Oh, okay.
We actually teach in 4 levels and 1 attunement at 4th level.
And then to be a master?
Yes, that's part of the 4th level.
The 4th level.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course you also teach Tai Chi and Qigong.
Qigong. That's
Qigong.
It. That's
Qigong?
Qigong.
Wonderful. Okay. So Judy, you identify yourself as a human by day, a Zeta Reticulan or a grey alien by night. Due to the amount of bad press surrounding the grey ETs, you must find our world a difficult place to live in sometimes. Is this one of the reasons you wrote the Zeta Message, to put the record straight?
Yes, Sharon, it is. In 1995, I underwent a very profound experience at a sacred site in England, during which a long needle with a crystal on the end was placed into my third eye chakra point. The idea behind this was it was like an upgrade, an energy upgrade. It was sort of like an acupuncture technique that was done on me. At the time I got a bit of a fright. It was scary because it did hurt, but
I imagine.
I understood what they were doing and accepted it. And part of this upgrade involved a download of information, and what the Greys wanted me to do, they wanted me to write a book from their perspective, a book on ET contact with Earth humans, because up until then all the books that have been written on this subject were always written from the human perspective.
Yes.
And so much disinformation's been put out on the Greys through these books, firstly through people who are undergoing experiences and don't understand what's happening, and of course the natural human reaction is fear. I mean, been there, done that. I felt huge fear as a child. Another thing or problem that's going on down here is that there is a negative group on planet Earth who are putting out disinformation about the Greys. So there's a lot of misinformation and negative information being put out worldwide, online, through books, through UFO groups, through experiences who aren't really experiences, they're posing as experiences, putting out this negative information. So what my Grey family wanted, they wanted me to write a book on their behalf, written from their perspective on what's really going on. when people are taken up on the ships, what the contact experience is about, why it's being done, and that there's no harm behind it. They're only here to help people, they're not here to harm. So during this process that was done on me with the needle and crystal, a lot of information was downloaded into my conscious mind to help me to understand the ET human contact experience from the grey perspective. And from that point on, I also started bringing in conscious memories of actually being a grey up on the ship performing procedures on people. So I really, really understood it from their perspective, and I still do. I understand it clearly from their perspective because I'm doing this work on a regular basis.
It's such a novel approach, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. But it really needs to be brought out.
Oh, well, when you think about it, it's a logical progression.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
yeah, I thoroughly agree.
Yeah.
Your first experience was at the tender age of 3, here in southeast Queensland. Would you mind sharing your contact experience with us?
Yes, I don't have a lot of memory of contact as a child. I specifically planned that I wouldn't have a lot of conscious recall because I wanted to experience it from the Earth human angle so that as I grew older and started working with people in this field, I would understand the fear factor. But I do remember one particular contact experience around the age of 3 when I was taken up the street by a very tall, thin woman who I thought of as my grandmother. And I can remember clearly my hand up there, she was holding my hand, and we walked up our street, and I was taken to what my child's mind believed was a railway station, and we boarded a train. And that was where the memory finished. I couldn't remember any more after that. But I woke the next morning feeling very excited. I knew it had been a wonderful experience. My grandmother had taken me somewhere. The thing was, my real-life grandmother was living with us at the time. So, of course, I approached her about it a few days later. "Oh, Nana, can we go back on the train?" So she sort of looked at me, what train? What are you talking about? You know, you took me on the train the other night. No, I didn't. There was no railway station anywhere near our house. Our street was actually a cul-de-sac. It was a dead end.
Ah, okay.
But I clearly remember being walked up the street by this woman and taken onto this vehicle, which I believe was a train, but years later I came to understand that it was actually an ET ship. And as the years passed, I had awful trouble getting my head around this because I knew that there was something like a railway station or something up the end of our street.
Some type of portal, maybe.
It would have been, for sure. Or even a ship landed, but in a higher frequency, vibrational frequency, so it would be visible to 3D sight. But I was really of two minds because as I grew older and I started to realise, no, I couldn't have gone anywhere. This street's a dead end, you know, it doesn't lead anywhere. But at the same time, I had this memory that says, yes, I did. So I was very torn two ways. And as a child, I also went through, as I say, a lot of fear connected with it. I always had fear that I was going to be taken, someone was going to come into the house and take me. And gee, I was probably 11 years old before I was even going to go to bed on my own. It was so bad. I mean, I was very embarrassed about that.
I remember reading that in the book, how you slept with your parents for...
well, very close by, but I used to need to have Mum sitting with me until I went to sleep. And then I was okay, they could go into their room.
Just by a nightlight.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Yeah, I always had one.
You talk about your post-initial contact experiences as upgrades. The first at 15, the second in 1983, and the third in 1995, with more to follow in the 2000s. Would you walk us through what exactly you mean by an upgrade and what was different between the various upgrades you have experienced?
Okay, when I refer to upgrades, what I'm talking about is an expansion of consciousness. Now, the average Earth human can access about 10% of their conscious awareness, which is intrinsically linked into the 10% of DNA that's active. And those people who are going through genuine contact experiences are being upgraded in that we're able to access more and more conscious awareness as opposed to subconscious and superconsciousness. Now, up until the age of 15, as I mentioned before, I was very, very scared. I didn't know what was going on. I knew something was happening, but I couldn't bring it to my conscious mind. At the age of 15, I had the first of what people describe as the mind awake, body asleep experience, which is like a body paralysis. Again, it was a very scary experience, but all I can remember was seeing the doorknob of my bedroom turning slowly. I shouldn't have been able to see it because it was very dark, but I could see it. So it was obviously an experience. It wasn't a normal 3D experience. I tried to call out to my parents and I couldn't because I was paralysed. I couldn't move. I didn't know what was happening, and the next thing I just blanked out. To wake up the next morning feeling fine, nothing had happened. But after that, I started getting an urge to learn Spanish dancing. This was where that started. Up until that point, I'd never had any interest in it at all.
None at all?
None at all.
So completely out of the blue? Completely
out of the blue. I got this strong urge to learn Spanish dancing. I sort of thought that, well, maybe I was a Spanish dancer in a past life or something, because I was starting to open up to reincarnation then. But it wasn't until I started learning and getting into it that I heard from my aunt overseas that my great-grandmother was a dancer. So it had obviously passed down in the family. And what I came to understand later was this was the first step. The Greys were starting to come in and make themselves known, but in a more human way. And with them, dance is extremely important. They were preparing me for the work I'm doing now. They wanted me to learn to get up in front of the public and perform, which I had never done. I had an absolute horror of the idea of getting up in front of people.
Most people do.
The dancing trained me to do that. It also taught me to deal with people of different nationalities, so I got used to the differences in people and understanding things on an empathic level of people who aren't of that nationality or race or culture. So it got me working with people who just come out from Spain. I think, and also for the Greys, dance is a balancing thing, to balance the energy system. And I know that as a child I needed help in that area because I was always catching colds and flus and things, and I needed to have my energy system balanced. So the dancing helped me hugely there. After I took it up, I was always very healthy after that. The second upgrade I had at age 30 in 1983 was huge. That was when 3 Greys came and stood beside me in the middle of the day, full daylight, middle of the afternoon, blocking out light from the window. As
they do.
As they do. And it was at that point that I fully woke up to the fact that, hey, I recognise you, you're family. Oh, wow, lovely. And this huge wave of love enveloped me. It was just the most amazing experience.
So you didn't run for the hills like most people would expect at all?
Well, I couldn't have because, again, I was paralysed.
Oh. that does help.
They made sure I didn't. And I had this loud, roaring, buzzing sound going on in my head, which is the sound of the astral. As your energy centre starts to open up, these other sounds start coming in. And once I saw them, I relaxed. It was fine. I didn't want to run. They had me. It was okay. And they stayed and talked to me for a long time. And they advised me that I needed to learn to meditate because they wanted to open up more communication with me. The meditation would help. I was also advised at that point in time to learn Tai Chi because having been a dancer, I was a very physical person, and they wanted me then to start working on a deeper spiritual level. And they said, if you want to learn to meditate, take up Tai Chi, which will help you because Tai Chi is like moving meditation, so it'll make a bridge between the two. The thing was, I'd never heard of Tai Chi at that point in my life, so after they left, I had to go and check out what they were talking about. The third thing they told me to do was to learn a natural healing modality of some sort, which eventually led me to learning Reiki. Everything happened exactly as they told me it would. We were living on acreage at the time, and they said you'll have to move back to the city to bring you amongst more people. The words they said to me were, "You've been hiding yourself out for long enough, it's time for you to get back to work." Everything after that started changing for me. Amazing coincidences started happening over the next 3 years. We did shift. I found Tai Chi classes around the corner from where I was living. A woman moved in next door who was a meditator, and her teacher had just moved up from Tasmania, who started a meditation group I was able to join. So everything just started
Synchronicity.
rocketing. Oh, it was just amazing. My whole life just turned around.
I love that.
After that,
I love it when that happens.
Yes, yes. And I know that that upgrade also involved a bit of a walk-in experience as well. I felt different energy with me from one of the grey teachers who I can feel with me when I need him.
So kind of like a twin soul experience?
Sort of, yes, yes. So that upgrade was very different to the one that happened when I was 15. And then, of course, the one in 1995, when the crystal was put into the third eye, that was different again, because again, that was a download, a huge download of information, along with an upgrade to my conscious mind, conscious awareness, to enable me to access that information on a conscious level so that it could be written into a book.
It's wonderful. Well, it sounds like they've had your life planned, like a soul contract.
Oh, they certainly have.
Up front.
It amazes me because this book, one of the books that they asked me to write, this one, the Zeta Message, when I go back now and read through it, it never ceases to amaze me the way my whole life has been planned, right from when I was very little. I've been prepared to carry out this work as a bridge between the Greys and the Earth humans.
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer in soul contracts. I think.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
I think sometimes we get here and we do forget, though, what we're. And we need a bit of a kick or a push or an event in our life or an incident, a happening to kind of steer us. You know, some of us. Well, I know in my case it was an illness that kind of put me on the right path.
That's right. That's right.
But you're kind of lucky in a way. It sounds like yours has gone to plan.
Yes.
Whereas mine, I've kind of tripped over myself more times than I needed to. But yes, no, yours definitely went to plan. So Judy, is there a connection between the Zeta Reticulans and Spanish or other Gypsy heritage?
Yes, Sharon, funny you should ask that. The Pleiadians and the Zeta Reticulans had a base in northern India about 8,000 years ago, and they were driven out from the base by a negative group down here and inhabited human bodies and basically scattered across the planet. And my belief is that they're the Gypsies of today, who also are a landless people. They don't have their own country. They're pushed around, rejected by the people, treated very much like the Greys. Modern Greys are treated by many people, or looked upon, I should say. So I think that there is a very strong connection there. The other funny thing was, when I first started to get in contact with the Greys and didn't know very much about them, I was in contact with a Romany elder in New Zealand. He was one of my mentors. And I once drew a picture of a grey on a letter I was writing to him, sent it over, and asked him if he knew who they were. And his reply was, "Oh yes, they're our people. That's the form we take when we die."
Wow.
So I found that amazing. It really confirmed what I'd been starting to formulate in my mind, that there's definitely a connection between the two.
And if you look back through the folklore of gypsies, you'll find a lot of interesting kind of creatures associated with them.
Exactly.
Like the opiers, the vampires, as they're commonly known, and the lichens, like a wolf.
That's right, exactly, exactly. And it's the same thing with the Greys. The screen images of the Greys take on creatures like wolves, cats, deer, owls, There's a huge amount of folklore also connected with that. The other thing is the abilities, the beyond third degree abilities that many gypsies have. Many of them poo-poo that. No, we're just ordinary, we don't have those abilities, but there are many who do. Many have very psychic abilities. And again, this would go back to their off-planet roots. And I know that amongst the gypsies there are a number of legends of off-planet heritage. And they never feel like they belong on Earth. So I think the whole thing, when you put all those facts together, it fits.
When they're always travelling, they're always known as the wanderers or the travellers.
Exactly.
When I was 13, just before I emigrated here to Australia, used to walk to school every day, and I'd walk past a gypsy encampment on the way, and I got to play each afternoon with the gypsy children on the way home, and I remember my parents, my father, getting really upset one day and coming and dragging me away from the gypsy families because they were deemed evil and not smelly and all these awful things. But I thought it a very natural thing to play with them, and even though I'd walk home with like a group of 6 or 7 others, I would leave that group and go and play with the gypsies. So
that's right.
No, it's funny, isn't it, when you look back on things like that?
For sure. And the other interesting thing with them is dance is such a very strong tradition with them, and it's the same with the Zetas and the Greys and the Pleiadians, all those star people. They look upon dance as being a way of balancing the energy in the body, the energy system of the body. I understand now, right from when I was pushed into becoming a dancer, that was part of their plan to help me to learn to dance, to rebalance my energy. And particularly in the gypsy dances, particularly in flamenco, which I did, there's a term that they use, duende, and what it loosely translates as spirit, but what it is, it's like a trance state that comes down over the dancer as they're performing. And a good, genuine flamenco dancer should always experience duende. It's something that people seek to try to experience, and it's the actual rhythm of the dance. I guess it's like the shamanic background of drumming. It's the same thing. It brings on a trance state. And I remember, I didn't realise I was doing it at the time, but years later when I was sitting in a meditation circle learning to go into trance, I realised, oh my goodness, I've done this since I was 15 years old as a dancer. It was really interesting to come to understand that. And I thought, wow, I've been trained in this right from a little one.
And that's called duende.
Duende. D-U-E-N-D-E. Duende.
I think when I write, I'm an author, and I go into like a zone.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, because I've had the same experience when I started to learn to meditate properly. Let the wind go through. I go to a library and I sit down at say 10:30 and start to write, and then I'd wake up at say 2:30, and I've written a whole lot of information. I'll typed it in, but I won't have remembered the hours just ticking over at all. I've been in the zone. I'd call it the zone.
The zone.
But maybe I'd rather call it duende.
Yeah.
Duende. Would you share with us your contact experience at Park Ridge when you were 30 years old?
Yes, Sharon, that was the one I mentioned before, the experience I had when I was 30 years old. Now, it's quite interesting because it was actually drawn out over a week. A week before, I had a lucid dream in which I met the one that I thought of at that time as the teacher. Now, I wasn't really aware of who or what he was. In fact, I think my conscious mind was telling me a Romany elder. But I knew he was a teacher or an elder of some sort. I also knew that he wasn't human. I was very aware of that. He was using, obviously, a screen image with me to make him look a little bit more human and gypsy, but I knew that he wasn't human. And we met on the bank of a stream, and the two of us sat together and talked for a long, long time. He had so much to tell me. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't remember anything that we'd spoken about, but what I could remember was this absolutely incredible sensation of love and oneness that passed between us. It was like he was understanding me right to the depth of my being, all the good parts, all the bad parts, everything he knew about and fully accepted. So it was a real unconditional love thing. And I was feeling the same thing with him. It was like we were part of the same soul. And I remember for several days after it feeling a little bit depressed because I wanted to go back.
I know that feeling.
I missed his presence. I missed the energy. I just wanted to go back there. Anyway, a week after that, it was a Sunday afternoon and my husband's family were over. We were on acreage and we had horses and dogs and things, so there was always plenty of work to do. And they'd come out and give us a hand with things. And in the middle of the afternoon, after lunch, I started feeling off colour, like I was coming down with the flu. And I excused myself and went upstairs to a quiet bedroom at the back of the house and shut the door. And they were all out in the garden, they didn't know where I was. And I lay down on the bed, and this was when the paralysis came over me and the roaring, buzzing sound in my head that I mentioned before. So I was lying down on the bed, and I had the window of the bedroom to my left. And the next moment, I became aware of three greys standing beside the bed. In such full 3D reality, they were blocking out the light from the window. My first reaction, it wasn't actually a fear. I was scared because of the paralysis and I was struggling to come out of it and the sound was giving me a headache. And when I saw them, it was like, oh, you know, it didn't quite click with me for a moment. And then all of a sudden, I recognised my teacher as one of them. And this was when this huge, oh my God, they're family.
The epiphany.
An epiphany. And I just absolutely felt my heart opening up. Anyway, the three of them stood beside the bed with me lying on the bed, and I think that they'd actually lifted me slightly out of the physical body for ease of communication. Because of course they don't communicate verbally, they communicate telepathically. And the human mind and brain has to be on a certain wavelength to be able to pick up on that telepathic communication. So this was why, because I'd never done anything like this before, they lifted me up out of the body so I could communicate more easily. And this was when I was given the message, you know, you've spent enough time hiding yourself around here, it's time for you to get back to work. And all these memories were coming back into my mind of, oh wow, yes, I've made a contract, a mission, this is my mission to be here. And they told me what I needed to do to learn to meditate, to learn Tai Chi, to learn a natural healing modality. And they told me, you'll be teaching those things, but you need to move back into the city where there are people. Because you need to be able to reach a lot of people. And when they told me I'd be teaching them, panic, you know, because my God, I don't know what Tai Chi is, I've never meditated, how can I teach them? It's all right, you'll be guided, trust us. And sure enough, the whole thing just fell into place after that, and it all happened just as they told me it would.
Wonderful. So Judy, when you're in what I refer to as your Zeta reticulan self, you obviously pilot an ET craft of some type. Is it all mental control or is there a physical element to piloting as well? And would you mind describing what the inside of a typical ET Zeta reticulan craft is or looks like?
Okay. I'll start with the first part of the question. It depends on the type of ship. Some of the ships do have physical control, but more often it's conscious mind control. Now, before the crew boards the ship, our flight preparation isn't testing, you know, landing gear and things like that. Our flight preparation is doing a Qigong type exercise. Because the ship is a conscious entity and our consciousness links into that of the ship, so we have to be at absolutely maximum focus to be able to operate the ship. And so we do like a Qigong type exercise to bring ourselves totally into focus. And we then, when we go onto the ship, our hands are placed on like a panel thing. And through the heart chakra point, which is in the middle of the palms, we link into the consciousness of the ship. So it's purely a mental exercise.
So if something happened to you, you were hurt or something, or had some type of trauma occur to you while you're piloting a ship, that would obviously crash the ship then, would it?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. That makes more sense to me now why there are so many down ships.
Yes.
You know, with so many stories of it.
Yes.
So,
I believe also they're being shot down. So,
well, yes.
weaponry being used down here.
It is Earth, so.
Surely we're not that accident prone.
No. Well, there do seem to be a lot of crashes. So I think last count I've had 33 crashes reported.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
that's a lot really, isn't it?
An awful lot. Yeah. I don't know, they always focus on the Roswell crash, but I mean there were heaps of crashes
It's
back
such
then.
I actually think that's so cold casey. It's like it's been over and done with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think Rendlesham Forest, what happened with the nuclear plant there and the military nuclear plant there, I think that is so much more important than Roswell. But it's not. Didn't occur in America, so of course nothing's as important as anything that occurred in America. So yeah, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, to the second part of the question, which was
what
the inside of a craft looks like.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the Zeta people down here, and there are a lot of us down here experiencing human lives so that we can understand things from a human perspective. And I'm in contact with a lot of our people. And all of us really resonate with the photos you see in travel brochures of the Greek islands. The white, beautiful, pure white architecture, little alleyways, little arches, and after hundreds of years of whitewashing, all the soft, rounded, moulded, sort of flowing lines of the architecture.
Oh, okay.
That's what the inside of our ships are like, particularly the crew quarters. Little narrow passageways, because I mean, in that form we're smaller. Arches,
the Mediterranean kind of white bluey look.
White, yeah, pure white, clinical white, pure white. A number of people who've been taken onto ships talk about, oh, they were filthy dirty, and oh, they smelled horrible, or there was a smell of sulphur.
That must have been the human-built ones.
Exactly, they're the fake ones, the MyLab type abductions. The real craft are absolutely clinically clean inside and pure white, and there's no sharp angles. All the angles into rooms and things are soft and flowing. Everything sort of merges in with everything else.
Is it more like an organic?
More like organic, yes, because the ships they're living entities.
That's
so,
what, yes.
So they're actually grown, they're not built, they're grown.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
But my personal experience is that there are two types of craft. There's the man-made kind of ET craft, which a lot of people see, but they have the metal sheath around them. And then there's the actual ET crafts, which are the organic kind, which kind of join together and then split apart and then can rejoin, and it's just amazing.
Into two, and and often they'll look small on the outside, and you'll go inside and it's massive.
TARDIS effect.
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you communicate when you are your Zeta reticulan self and not the human?
Okay, it's all telepathic. All our communication is telepathic. Some of the Zetas can make sound. I actually remember waking up one night with the sound of clicking in my ear, and I could remember having a conversation with somebody up on the ship. The Zeta reticulans are actually evolved out of insectoid stock as opposed to humans who were evolved out of mammalian stock. So they can make some sort of clicking insecty sound, but generally communication is telepathic. Now the problem, people taken up on the ship often complain that the Zetas won't communicate with them, and they get very upset about this. The point that they're not understanding is we can't communicate unless their brains are in the right alpha mode. Because it's a vibrational frequency telepathic communication, we can't get through. It's like they enclose themselves in a cocoon of fear that we can't penetrate. Now, I had a very interesting experience up on the ship once, excuse me. When I start talking about this, the Zeta side comes through.
It's funny you're having trouble talking when we're talking
Difficulty
about
with
communication.
talking often happens. Right. We had a human man up on the ship who'd been brought up a number of times, and he was lying on the bed in the clinic on the bench, and I came into the room, and he turned his eyes to see me. He was partly paralysed, but he was able to turn slightly to see me. And the look of absolute horror on his face was quite, you know...
That's a bit upsetting, really.
It's upsetting.
It's kind of like, what? You don't like the dress? Yes,
Bad
okay,
hair,
I need
mate.
to lose a few pounds.
Bad hair day, but we don't have any hair.
We shouldn't laugh about it, should we?
The funny thing is, when I'm up there, I'm no different down here. You see me down here as a human, same as when I'm a grey, I'm no different. So, of course, the thought went through my mind, you know, oh, gee, you know, surely he's used to us by now, surely I don't look that bad. And I did, I felt a bit bad about it. So the next thing, I went into the room and we were going to carry out a procedure on him. Now, he had one of the earth plane implants in his head. A lot of people are carrying these around, and our job was to remove it for his safety, of course, because he was being given negative experiences through this implant. And I can remember myself and two others standing at his head, and I can remember my long grey fingers going down inside his brain, undoing this implant and removing it. But I remember trying to communicate with him and the frustration of saying to him, look, it's okay, I'm here to help you, I'm not going to hurt you. And I was saying this to him over and over again, look, calm down, you know, we're not going to hurt you, it's okay, it's okay. And I could see I was not getting through to him. He wasn't hearing a word I was saying. And the other funny thing was, while I was operating on him, again, you know, your mind wanders when you're doing these jobs, and I was just thinking to myself, because he had a very distinctive hair growth on his face, like a beard. And I remember thinking to myself, gee, if I ever see you down there on planet Earth, I'd remember you. And funnily enough, many, many years later, I saw this fellow's photo. He was an experiencer who was sort of getting out there a bit, having books published. When I saw his photo, I recognised him straight away as the one that I'd operated on up on the ship.
I bet he had a big story. The Zeta Message, do you want to hold that up, is autobiographical. However, did you employ some form of automatic writing to complete the book? And if you did, how does the process or the flow work?
Well, yes, this is interesting because part of my experience back in 1983 was, as I mentioned before, I was told that I needed to learn to meditate. Now, the meditation circle that I joined was a closed circle run by a spiritualist minister, and part of my training involved automatic writing. So even back then, I had no plans of writing any books at that stage. I wasn't a writer, but even back then they were starting to prepare me. So when I came to write the Zeta Message, yes, a lot of it was, you know, it's my own story plus Helene's story, and I told her to keep diary notes of the amazing activity that was happening in their home.
It is amazing.
Yeah. But at the same time, yes, a lot of it is channeled as well, because the funny thing is when I go back and read the book again, I think to myself, oh wow, did I write that? I don't remember writing that.
I've had moments like I've actually written things, and then I've gone and done the research later and found that I've actually written events that have occurred, but I had no earlier recollection of.
Exactly.
So that's when I think you know that you've channeled from something else, a
Exactly.
Akashic record or whatever.
Exactly. And the other thing that used to happen was Oris, the grey teacher who was in contact with Helene's daughter Kira, he was trying to communicate through her, but at that stage she was only about 12 or 13. So she didn't always get a complete grip on what he was trying to get across. And there's still a little bit of fear with her at that stage. So sometimes he'd tell her something and she'd misinterpret it. She came out once that, the Greys want me to, they want to take my soul. And I told them, no, I want to live here, down here, I don't want to die. And this was a complete misinterpretation of something that he'd said to her. But poor Helene at that stage, she didn't know that much about it, and she rang me the next day all upset about it. Oh, look, Auris has said this to Kira, you know, look, what's going on? So I in turn would then contact Auris, and I'd sit down with the pen in my hand and channel what he would have to say, and he would explain to me what he'd actually said to Kira. And he'd say, no, look, she's got it wrong. I didn't say this, I said that.
How old was Kira?
She was only about 12 or 13 then.
So there's a lot of room there for miscommunication and misunderstanding.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for any of them. So often I would have to be a bridge between them, just to try and clear up different things and misinterpretations that had come out. Because again, she was trying to do it telepathically and she had no training in that. She was only a child. So yeah, there was some difficulties along those lines. But Auris was always very patient with her, and he was always happy to come back and explain to me and try and clear it up. He didn't want them to be scared, so he was always very eager to clear up any problems like that. So that was a lot of the book is channeled things like that as well.
In your recent presentation to UFO Research Queensland, Judy, you used a couple of terms that I found interesting, namely soul rescue and MILAB, M-I-L-A-B, abduction. Would you mind explaining them further?
Yes, well, soul rescue is required because the Earth's human mind has been so brainwashed over so many millennia through various religious dogma, etc. Many people after death get caught, they get trapped in the lower astral area. It also happens with people who are alcoholics or addicted to drugs or whatever, because their vibrational frequency is low at the time of death. They can't move through the veil properly and they get stuck. Now, the Greys actually specialise in this soul rescue work. Because there are higher beings out there, but they actually have trouble because they vibrate at such a high frequency. They have trouble coming down to help these people, whereas the Greys can do it. I've actually had a couple of experiences where I remember going in to help a soul move on from a situation like that. Okay? Now the MILAB experiences, yes, a huge amount of what are perceived as ET contact are actually MILAB experiences, and these are generated from down here. There's a negative group working here on Earth who don't want the positive ETs coming here, and so they either put up the stories like they used to do, belittling people who've had UFO experiences. Oh, it's,
tinfoil hat wearing, Looney Tunes.
Just imagination. Oh, it's a flock of low-flying ducks or something.
Weather balloons.
That was their job to negate any decent evidence that came through. And now, with so much good evidence coming out through people like the late Edgar Mitchell and some of the other astronauts, as well as police officers, pilots, etc., who have all had experiences. Now they've changed their tack. The latest thing is to create their own ET contact experiences, but in a very negative way. And they have some amazing technology to enable them to do that. The term MILAB is from military abduction. And they actually have developed sort of little biotechnical sort of creatures that look like the Greys, but they're actually manufactured down here. The Greys that they talk about at Dulce in America are an example of this. They're man-made, they're manufactured down here. Many of the ships that are seen around military bases are also manufactured right here on Earth. They have technology that the average Earth human would not have a clue about. Mind control, a lot of channeling also. They're the ones who are generating it, particularly channeling that is leading towards warnings of negative aliens coming to invade the planet. A lot of the gloom and doom predictions, I'm not saying there's not earth changes happening, there are, but a lot of the gloom and doom predictions have been put out by this group down here to gear the human mind towards fear, because they basically feed off fear.
Well, they're doing a good job at the moment.
They certainly are. certainly.
I know a lot of people I know now, even mainstreamers, just don't watch the news anymore. It's just so depressing.
Yeah.
You know, don't read the paper. People are just tuning out
Yes.
completely from mainstream because of the negativity.
Yeah.
You know, you've really got to have some light in the dark, I think.
Oh, look, you know, what people need to understand, it's so important for people to understand we create our own reality. Quantum physics is proving it. And this negative group down here is creating this fear mindset to keep themselves in control. I call them the controllers. And they're trying to hold this control on planet Earth. They've had it for millennia and they don't want to give it up.
Who would?
That's right.
Reiki and its various attunements seem to play a pivotal role in contact and awakening for some experiences. Do you agree?
Absolutely, and for sure.
I knew you'd agree, actually.
I was led into Reiki again by the Greys as the natural healing modality that they wanted me to practice, and I've found since doing it, because it raises the vibrational frequency. Any healing modality that raises the energy frequency of the body attracts the ETs in because they love the energy. Now, it was Reiki that actually started Helene's family off on the ET
That's
contact
right, their attunement,
pathway.
was it?
Yeah. Because Helene had learned Reiki a couple of years earlier because her children suffered from asthma. And she found it really helped them hugely. And the children were enjoying it so much, they wanted to learn, as did her husband. So both children and the husband were attuned to Reiki by the same teacher who taught Helene. And about a week later was when the ET activity started up in their home.
Beacon.
So, yeah. And they were terrified at first. They had no idea what it was. They weren't into these things at all.
But they were lucky in a way that it happened as a family.
Exactly.
I don't think they realise, a lot of this first timers, for some of us, it's scary because you're on your own.
Exactly.
Usually in a dark bedroom.
Yeah, or you have a family who don't understand. Yeah.
Well, everyone has a family. There's always one like us in every family.
Reiki raises the vibrational frequency of your energy body. And so it's a great way of bringing in ET contact if you want to have it, because the ETs love the energy. Any form of energy development will bring them in. But I know Reiki, I mean, that's the one I've experienced is Reiki. I haven't done anything else, but I'm sure other modalities also help. With Helene's family, Helene learned Reiki to treat her children who both had asthma. And the Reiki worked beautifully for that, and because it helped them so much, both her children and her husband decided to learn it. And a week after they were tuned to Reiki was when the ET activity started in their house. Now, they were absolutely terrified because they had no idea what it was. They weren't into these things. They'd never heard of ETs. They weren't into anything slightly new agey at all. Both her children were educated in the Catholic school. They went to Catholic school at the time, so they weren't into anything. So she called her Reiki teacher in, who was also my teacher, to give the house a cleansing, because there's a procedure that we do using the Reiki symbols that will clear ghosts and negative entity out of buildings. I've used it on numerous occasions and it's always worked really well. So anyway, they called him in and he did a house cleansing. So what happened? The activity increased.
Skyrocketed.
Because it wasn't anything negative, it was the Greys who absolutely...
It was like, come on, all you can eat bonanza. Buffet.
So luckily, this teacher knew that I'd had contact all my life, and so he told Helene to contact me, because he was actually going away on a holiday and he felt terrible leaving this family with all this happening. So she rang me the next day, and funnily enough, I'd never met her, but I recognised her voice on the phone straight away. And
I have those moments with people.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So we had a really long chat, and she was just totally okay about it. She didn't poo-poo me. She was completely open, and I explained to her what was happening, and we just became very close friends after that. And I mentored the family and helped them through, and that was where it all started.
I was quite taken aback at the UFO Research Queensland presentation when you discussed your 9/11 experience. Would you mind sharing them with our fellow oddologists today?
Yes, for sure. That was a very, very interesting experience. Just prior to that, we had been taught a thing that the Greys called an aura cleanse. And it's a 13-step healing process which cleanses a person's aura. And just about a week after that was when the 9/11 event happened in America. And I remember the morning after it happened, I woke up feeling really, really bad with a really bad headache. And I was speaking to Helene that day, and she rang in the morning and she said, "Do you realise you and Kira were over helping out with the rescue mission at 9/11, at the ground zero?" This then, of course, twigged off, that's why I'm feeling so sick. And auras conveyed to me that I was feeling sick because I wasn't cutting off from the human emotion enough. We have very, very strict training up on the ship that when we're dealing with anything like that, we must not be caught up in the emotion because it drains our energy, and so therefore we can't help the people as much as we should be able to. So anyway, after that, I didn't have a great deal of conscious memory of it, whereas Helene's daughter did. We were travelling over there. Every night during sleep, our grey bodies would get up out of the human body. We were travelling over there and spending time with people who were actually trapped within the area, and the rescuers couldn't get to them. And I've spoken about this on a lot of interviews in America, because I say to people that if you lose a loved one under circumstances like that, and I know people get very upset because they think, their loved one died, trapped in there, I couldn't get to them, they would have had a terrible, lonely death.
The awful survivor guilt would be awful.
Yeah, well, that's not quite the case, because when that happens, helpers from what we call upstairs, whether they're ETs or angels or whoever, come in and stay with the person and give them healing and assist them over. And Kira could remember seeing people who were ready to transition, and one of the angelic helpers would come down and hold their hands out, and the person's hands, astral hands, would come up out of their body. The angelic being would grab them and lift them up and say, "Come on, it's time for you to wake up," and lift them up out of the body. And we were using this aura cleanse technique on people, both people who were injured but were going to live, and those who were dying. All of the workers, the ET and angel workers over there who were helping out, were using the same aura cleanse technique on the people that we've been taught and that we've now loaded up onto YouTube, which people can access on the Zeta Message is our YouTube channel. And
also check that out after.
Zeta Guardian 1 is another one. And it's a 13-step aura cleanse, and we teach it now in our Reiki seminars.
Wonderful.
But it was an amazing experience. I do have one conscious memory of it that's not very pleasant. I was walking along over there in my grey body and not sort of looking where I was going, and I almost stepped on a human trunk. No legs, no arms, no head, just a trunk. And I remember I started to step and I looked down, oh my God, and I jumped back. I can remember that clearly. But yeah, it was a very traumatic time for everyone over there. We were also giving help to the rescue workers because, of course, their energy is really compromised in a situation like that.
Difficult to function, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, that was a job that Kira was given a lot. She was sort of in my charge because, being very young to all of this, she'd never done it before. And she used to be there more in her human body, whereas I was there in my grey body. And she was sort of working with me. So what we used to do to get her away from all the horrible stuff that was going on, she was given the job of placing her hands on the rescue workers' shoulders. Because, of course, some of them were just about collapsing from shock themselves. So they needed all the healing they could get as well. So that was her job, to place her hands on their shoulders to help them through.
A little earlier you spoke about the controllers. Who are they and why are they on Earth?
The controllers are reincarnations of the very first human species that was developed on planet Earth. Now, human life is always bioengineered. It has to be. Human life cannot evolve on its own. It's got to be biologically engineered.
Attacked by the sun. By the ET, actually.
Yeah. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, keep going.
Back to where we were.
Yeah.
And the very first human race on Earth was way, way before Adam and Eve. They were actually created by a draconian group who came here and bioengineered a humanoid reptoid species out of the dinosaur species. There was a biped-type dinosaur that was manipulated, engineered.
Doesn't sound that attractive at the moment. No. Okay.
To be the first human race. So there's been a number of Genesis events on planet Earth. Now, some of those beings are still down here, reincarnating back again. They were a very aggressive race, or they became very aggressive, and they hijacked the planet, going right back many, million years ago. They basically hijacked the planet, and other ETs moved away because they couldn't cope with the energy down here. Now, it was this reptoid human group that had been created down here who then went on to bioengineer a mammalian primate species to create what is now modern man.
Oh, okay.
And they were using them as a slave race for a very, very long time. And that's why there's all these different, Neanderthals and this and that, and Cro-Magnon man and all these different ones who were developed by this group.
So they were just kind of refining the material, the root material.
Yeah, but they kept them as slaves, so they were still leaving them sort of on the border of the animal and human kingdom. They weren't enabling them to evolve properly as humans. And so eventually the other ETs came in off planet to intervene in this situation because it couldn't be allowed to go on as it was. And that was the event that's spoken of in the Bible as Genesis, Adam and Eve, the first proper humans being created. But this early human race, I call them, in my latest book, this one, Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, is where I go into all this history of planet Earth. And I call them repterans as opposed to reptilians or reptoids, because there are reptilian people on other planets, because human life has evolved out of many different life forms. And reptilians, off-planet reptilians are fine, they're not negative, they're coming here to help with the rest of the ETs. But these repterans who hijacked the planet are still here, and they've continued to reincarnate and reincarnate. And the more modern day version of them I refer to as the controllers, and they're the ones who are still here, still with very high technology. They're the ones who are carrying out the MyLab abductions, things like that, and trying to create a whole fear scenario around the ETs who are now coming in to try and stop this situation from continuing.
And they're also the ones that can shapeshift?
Yes.
So that they're the ones that people might refer to as like the Bilderbergs, the royal families, and
yeah. At the same time, it's not to say that they're all negative. Some of them are perfectly good people. They have evolved. They're decent people, and they care about the planet and humanity. But there's still a core group that is holding humanity back, who don't want to give up control of the planet.
You kind of understand that, can't you, in a way?
Oh, they basically use the divide and conquer technique to keep Earth-plane humanity in control. They brainwash people through religion and through governments, through politics, etc. So they've got Earth humans very, very well brainwashed, very, very much under control, caught up in addictions, etc.
Yes. Thank you. So, have you been on the receiving end of any... Oh, no, you're just being beaten up by the poster.
By poster.
I'll keep going. On the receiving end of any UFO skepticism or debunking, and how do you handle it when it happens?
Well, if I could just put my hand up like that, it'd be really handy. No,
You want to
actually,
move? Or?
I've been pretty lucky so far. I haven't really been on the end of very much of it. I tend to be careful of who I speak to.
Yes.
And the majority of interviews I do are with people like yourself who are open to this and sympathetic to it. You've got to be very careful of who you actually, talk to about it.
Definitely.
I know where the debunkers are coming from. They're coming from a stance of fear and a fear of losing control. They think that they know their whole world. Their whole world is just 3D, and they have no idea that there's so much more out there, and they're too frightened to admit that there is more out there.
Exactly.
So I think by understanding that they're coming from fear, it helps you to deal with them a little bit more.
Yes, I've lost my patience with a lot of that these days. But I'll try it. I'll try that approach next time.
Good luck.
Looking at the person and thinking, this is from a place of fear. Do you actually ever say that directly?
I think I've got a debunker right here.
You've got a post, a banner debunker.
I've got my hand out here holding it.
And lastly, if you had an irrational truth to share with the world, what would it be?
Oh, look, the really, really good irrational truth that so many people, including scientists, have trouble with is the fact that we create our own reality by the way we think. And the controllers are having a huge field day with this because they're putting out so much fear to keep humans held down and controlled by fear. They feed off it, so that's why they want the fear, the fear factor, the emotion, to keep flowing, the emotions of fear and anger. And if people would only accept the fact that we create our own reality and understand that totally, that we have to keep ourselves positive, we have to focus on positivity. I'm not saying that we take a Pollyanna attitude, oh, it's all lovely, it's all fine. We know it's not, okay. We understand that there's stuff going on, that's fine, but don't go looking for it and don't focus on it all the time. Bring your thoughts back to positivity continually, because that's the sort of future that we're creating. And I mean, I know what sort of future I want to create for my beautiful planet Earth.
Yes.
And for our children. We don't want a future of fear and anger. We want love and positivity.
Exactly.
So that's where people have got to learn to start focusing and move away from all this negative fear-mongering and drama.
Thoroughly agree. Okay. Thank you very much, Judy, for your time and your patience and your knowledge.
Thank you, Sharon. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Me too.